Staff and guests, please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day in Berry County. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve our communities. We thank you for the people that come to these meetings and take the time to find out what's going on in our county. We ask you at this time, Lord, to remember former commissioner and fellow commissioner Bob Wenger, and be with his family as they're going through this situation of his death. I think it's going to be more of a celebration, Lord, and we know that you're involved with it. We thank you again for the opportunities and the wisdom that you give us to do these meetings. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the purposes of attendance, the clerk will call the roll.
Connor? Here. Geiger? Absent. Gibson?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Parker?
Yes, here.
Smelker?
Here.
Wayne?
Here. Approval of written agenda. At this time, any commissioner or member of the public may ask for an item to be removed from the consent agenda and placed under items for consideration.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Been moved by Gibson, support by Jackson to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Reports from state and county officers. Does any state or county officer or their representative have a report to share with the board? Seeing none. Limited public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
Morning.
Sharon, can you check to make sure that mic is on?
Is that better?
Much.
That may be too much better. At the February 26th, 2019 public hearing for the Berry County Parks and Recreation 5-year master plan, I pointed out some corrections that needed to be made. After the hearing, Commissioner Geiger moved, seconded by Commissioner Parker, to adopt the plan as amended. The motion carried with a unanimous roll call vote. I recently went to the county's website to review the plan and was very surprised to see none of the corrections had been made. I worked on that plan, and my name is on it. So I'm going to be pretty persnickety about this. I do not knowingly put out incorrect information, and I don't believe that you commissioners do either. I'm going to provide you with copies of the corrections that I pointed out, the minutes from your meeting, and the highlighted sections, and I have highlighted the sections on the pages that need to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none. Various correspondence. Does any commissioner have any correspondence to share with the board? Consent items.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
Chair, I would move for the approval of the March 25th, 2019 Board of Commissioner meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Connor, second by Parker. To approve the items listed under the consent agenda. Discussion is not allowed and a roll call vote is required. The clerk will call the roll.
Connor?
Yes.
Geiger? Absent. Gibson?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Smelker?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes. Consent items are approved. Presentations, Drain Commissioner Dahl.
We didn't do it on the earlier part because we want more than 3 minutes. Jim Dell, Berry County Drain Commissioner. I think you guys each got a hard copy of our report, yes? You'll have to excuse me a little bit because with 1.5 hands, it ain't working very well. During the past year, the drain office has been pretty busy. We've had 4 more petitions that we formed boards of determination for. All 4 of them passed. Our nuisance control, our trapper's been busy as a beaver. Real busy guy. So far, he's taken 26 beavers out of the drains last year. Yeah, anywhere from 35 to 60 pounds. It's pretty good sized little critters. We started the discussion last fall with the people on the Thornapple Drain 1. Nobody knew that was a drain. We went through the books, found it, because we have a lot of people in Nashville that are concerned about flooding over there. That drain actually goes from the old Nashville Dam all the way down to Thornapple Lake, and it's overrun by down trees and all sorts of good stuff in the drain. We get tires and all sorts of things, so. 2 of the petitions formed that we did BODs for in 17. We've got them. One of them's almost done, and the other one's bid to be done this spring. One of them was Holmes Drain, which is the corner of Charlton Park and Center Road. One of the most telling pictures of that is this top right corner. That Center Road would flood about every year. The road commission had raised the road 2 different times in the past trying to prevent flooding. Basically, the drain wasn't working, so we bid that out. Scott Pavlak he's working on finishing that up right now. You can see in the picture the little road closed sign, but that doesn't stop people. And our fear was somebody's going to hit that water, slide into the ponds on both sides and drowned. So we did undertake that one. The other one is the Fine View Drain. The road commission actually wrote the petition in 15, so when I took office, we picked up with that in 17. You can see some of the damage that was done by flooding down there on Fine View Bluff. It literally washed one guy's house away. There was a lot of scuttlebutt about what was happening down there. It wasn't actually a drain district, so that had to start from ground zero and be redone. So that one, Mead Brothers got the bid on that. That's to be started shortly after road restrictions come off this spring. As you can see, you can see water lines in there where there was actually 4 feet of water in that guy's basement. They lost their whole basement because of that situation. The next one, the Cloverdale Drain, the BOD was met. That was at the request of MDOT. There's a swamp on one side of M43 down by Cloverdale that was actually coming across the road in the pictures. They ended up 2 years in a row now. They pumped that down. They are going to raise the road, but they also wanted the right to be able to take that water across into Cloverdale Lake. So we did a BOD on an extension for Cloverdale Drain. That's the drain under Guernsey Lake Road that's undersized. We've known about it since '92, but it never got fixed. And also there's flooding. We got a dozen or 15 emails from people on Long Lake as late as last Labor Day where they were ticked that they had flooding issues because we hadn't moved forward fast enough on the creating the drain outlet of Long Lake. So. The next page is the Shallow Lake Drain. Wall Lake has a dam, but it isn't functioning correctly because the water can't get away from the lake quick enough. It gets down to Shallow Lake and backs up because the undersized culvert's on the outlet. That was another BOD. We're working with property owners right now to get easements to do the work. We want to change out 3 culverts, and then we can get better drainage out of Wall Lake. It'd be a more timely response. We won't lose erosion. We won't lose yards. We won't lose impacts on properties on Wall Lake, we're hoping. And it's funny because when I talked to the engineer, we know we have to extend the drain as far as Little Cedar. We're getting calls from Little Cedar that they have flooding issues and they want us to extend the drain, and we have gotten the easements to extend it through underneath Dowling Road to Big Cedar. So, I mean, that's how these petitions work. People start saying, hey, wait a minute, if you're going to flood you're going to fix their issues, we want ours fixed too. The Clear Lake, what's that?
Jim, how do all of these, because you're in the Delton area, how do all of these tie in and maybe affect the next one down the road? I mean, how is fixing Wall Lake and some of these other ones, is that going to affect Upper Crooked Lake?
No, I would like to say that would help Upper Crooked Lake, but it won't. All these are basically, and the biggest problem we have down in that whole section of the county is water levels in the groundwater is up. So everybody's having more issues. We don't get the drainage we used to. Of course, there's a lot of construction and everything else that adds to it. But no, these are actually, Shallow Lake goes to Cedar Creek. So that'll take water one way. That takes the water out of Wall Lake. The Long Lake issue goes to Fall Creek, which is another outlet. Let me back up. There's 3 districts that all bump up against each other, and Crooked Lake would be in a separate district. Is just a bizarre deal. You got fingers going every which way, so it makes it kind of tough for people to understand. Everybody thinks that somebody else is in their drain district, and they're not. So the last one was the Clear Lake drain. A gentleman by name of Stan Aarons, he's flooded out. That was actually one we did in 17, and we're getting close to getting that finished up. As you can see, that floods his yard. It comes up almost to his house, and actually the grade is higher than his basement at some points. Something else we tried, something new this year that they passed, I believe in 13, was a 196A, where we have the right to go downstream of a drain if we get an engineer to say that the stream downstream is impacting our drains. So we cleaned the Wolford Moor out in late 17, was it? And it on Denny McKelvey's property, it didn't do any good. It just got the water to Osborne Road quickly. So we decided to do a 196A, which typically we would go get a permit to work in a stream downstream of a drain. But we worked with Paul Fortin, the engineer from Spicer, and for $1,900 he wrote up the paperwork to say that this was an obstruction to the drain and we had the right to clear it as long as we have the property owners. And that was at a cost of $1,933 for the engineer and his oversight. Typically, when we get a permit to do something like it, it's between $4,000 and $5,000. So we were able to save that district a couple, $3,000, which, I mean, when it all shakes out, that's the best news we got. The next page is where we've been doing work with the Mini. You can see by the bottom picture that we have the availability to go right up through a drain with that Mini and swamp mats and work all the way around the trees and never take down a tree. It saves us the labor of taking down trees. It makes a lot better project when it's done and we don't have to do erosion control. That's over on the Barry Eaton. And this is what happens. This is the breaking point between getting a drain working and getting a drain that ain't working. At upstream of this, I mean, it just floods everything around. The water doesn't know where to go. We found out last year when we cleared the brush and the trees and the debris that we didn't have any frogs or turtles or anything in that area, and we're assuming it's because the wetlands are actually getting flooded out. So by doing this, that gets the water back into the drain like that, and that's what we're shooting for. To give you an idea how well it's working, we can go in with mats, and we've been tracking it for 3 drains. we're doing about 82 cents a foot. Our best bids on other drain work that they ain't using mats is $1.50 to $1.65 a foot. So we're saving about half of what it would cost to get somebody in there. This is part of our ACO. We got an agreed administrative consent order with the DEQ and AG on the Little Thornapple. We've got all the plans together to do the work. About 80% of the work is already done. Part of that project is going to be, we're working with the road commission to change out the crossing at Charlton Park Road that floods every year. I mean, it literally closes the road and they're down to a 4-ton limit. The road commission's going to put in a new 38-foot structure, and that should alleviate that. But that was part of our ACO to get that project done. We've planted 630 trees so far on that Little Thornapple. Ross Jackson's crews have gotten a lot of the material cleaned up out there. So that's going very well. We've had a really good reports from property owners. They're pretty happy with things. They're happy to see it coming to an end. The last thing is the McClellan Drain, which was petitioned in 2010. We finally got a temporary easement on one of the properties so we could finish that project and get that assessed instead of leaving it on the county books. This year, Tammy was pretty pleased. When we went through our budget at the end of the year, we returned about 14.5% of our operating budget. When we looked back 13, 14, and 15, there was 4% turned back to the county. And so we appreciate you guys not telling us, hey, if you don't spend it, you don't get it. So I think that shows that that kind of works for, I think the whole county's that way. So any questions? Uh-oh.
When MDOT says we need to do something, how does the assessments work then?
On the Cloverdale situation, the only way they can do that work is they can't petition for a drain extension, but Jim Davis agreed that he will pay for all the work to do with extending that up.
Jim Davis.
He's the hydro.
Okay.
Engineer.
Yeah, the drainage, my
Okay.
counterpart at the state, and he runs, I think, all of Michigan, doesn't he?
He's pretty close to, they're smaller districts. I'm not exactly sure on that.
Okay.
So the owners of the land around there are not assessed?
Not
at
for
all?
this, no.
Comes out of state funds?
Yep, and what my agreement was with Jim, and I hope Jim's still there when we get this thing done. I said, look, to add this water to Cloverdale Lake, we have to do an improvement from Cloverdale into Long Lake, and I said we have to improve the outlet of Long Lake to prevent flooding there. And I said, I expect you to be willing to pay for most, if not all of them changes. And he said he thought he could. So that's where we're shooting from. Now, one thing that I should have probably mentioned in here is Crooked Lake. We got a really good meeting with the new director of Water Resources Division, March 15th. Previously, the DEQ had told us we couldn't go north with any of the water from Crooked Lake. At this point, Jared Sanders got on board and said, you know, if you're only taking some of the water off and it's not going to flood anything out, and Brian, since he's worked all the way up through the whole thing, we may end up being able to use that as our long-term outlet. So we were pretty tickled about that. The other choice was to go 3 to 4 miles south and then put an infiltration bed in, and we may have that as part of the plan for some of the water, but looks like a lot of the water is going to be able to go north. So we were really tickled. That should knock the price down. I mean, it's still not going to be cheap, but, you know, Brian Sensi told DEQ, if you force us to go south, you'll take a $2 or $3 million project and make it $10 million. And he was pretty adamant that we're working with taxpayers' money and we don't have a choice to walk away. I mean, if we were a multi-billion-dollar company that could just say, we don't want to do this and walk away, that'd be different. But we don't have that option, and we can't put people out of their houses to fix their flooding solutions. So, any other questions?
Is there a fall toward the north then?
Right now we bought Darrell Jones's property. We bought 23 acres there that we can pump onto, and that will create a good gravity going into Delton Drain. Otherwise, there's about 3 feet of fall. Brian said theoretically we could make it go without a pump, I really struggle with that because that ain't a whole lot of fall to go about a mile. So be ticklish. So
What, did MDOT give you any indication of the work on M43 as far as raising that roadway?
they're going to raise the road also. We have a meeting
Next week.
it was supposed to be a week ago because they're working with some engineers on building the road up. The problem with building the road up there at Cloverdale is it's on a swamp, and the more weight you put, the lower the road actually goes. That was one of the problems with the center road crossing is they add dirt, the ground underneath. The roads weren't dug out to good material down 10, 20, 30, 40 feet. So they put dirt on it, and it just actually forces the road to go lower. That's why they haven't done it in the past. So,
Is it scheduled? Is a projected date? Is it within 5 years? Do they have anything, or is this still?
to build the road up?
Yeah.
I'm guessing within the next year, the way they're pushing this, that they've already got their engineers working on it, but they still want to get that water out of there so they don't have this in the future. So,
Okay. When they if they raise that road up in the next year or two, does that mean the Cloverdale drain from Cloverdale Lake to Long Lake is going to be expanded prior to then? Does that have to be reverse engineered to make that?
No, they can build the road up and hopefully it'll stay up for a while.
Okay.
And then we would, at that time, probably bore the pipe under M43 to relieve the swamp on the east side. So, yeah, it gets, that was our first thing why don't you just build the road up? And they said, it doesn't work. It just, it's like putting a raft out in the water. You can put all the dirt you want on it, but it just makes that raft start sinking lower and lower. So they didn't feel they're going to do it for short term, but they don't think it'll make a long term fix. So
Okay.
he said, okay.
And I read in the paper, Glassby Lake, that the MDOT, I think was quoted as saying MDOT ordered the removal of the dam.
Yep. When we got the permit last summer to back charge water into Glassby Lake to protect them homes, our deal with the MDOT was we could use their road as a barrier as long as they didn't feel there's any effect on that road with our extra water. There was some concerned citizens. They saw water coming up on the road actually about a quarter mile north of the Sandbag Dam, and they felt that it was from Glassby Lake holding that water. Brian Sensi explained to him, no, that water is from the wrong side of the road and there's no culvert there. But Kerwin Kermeen got a hold of me. He's the MDOT guy in the area, and he said, our agreement was if we felt, didn't have to prove it, if we felt or got any kickbacks that it had to be taken down, you agreed that you would. And I said, yep, that was our agreement, and if our word ain't any good, then we ain't good for nothing. So we went in and took the bags down. Didn't make much of any difference because the lake has come up so far. There was only about 2 inches of difference between the top of the sandbags we had in there and the lake level. So when we pulled them, it just made a big swirly that looked really cool, but it didn't really have much of an effect. So I was down there last week, and Glassby Lake without the bags in it is still at 927.5, which is, we'd actually lowered the bags in December about 3 inches from what our permit said, because we thought, well, we agreed that we'd lower a little bit going into winter. So, but, when the MDOT and you got an agreement with them, if you don't hold to your word, then, we ain't going to be able to keep them as people that we can work with. So.
Okay. And I'm sure you've been on the email string, and there's been a bunch of them. But there was also, they were saying that on one side, MDOT ordered the removal of the dam.
Yep.
But the dam's still there. That
It's underwater.
They removed some of the bags.
Yep,
But they didn't remove the structure.
Yeah, we took it down about 6 inches underwater so that the water can flow through. Brian Sensi's already got the agreement with the MDOT that they're going to replace that culvert this summer. So instead of adding more expense to the drainage district by setting up the signage and pulling everything out, which is probably another $8,000 or $10,000, we'd said, okay, we got the water down. It's not holding any water back in the lake, in Glassby Lake at this time. So our agreement with Audrey Kirk and Kerwin Kermeen is, okay, when we replace that culvert, we'll take the sandbag, everything out that was put in there, and that way we only close the road once, because everything comes down to money. So,
Okay.
And
Are they replacing the culvert? Are they putting a larger culvert in? What's the process?
we don't know. Brian hasn't got that engineered for him. That's part of the project. So originally, we thought we'd do that once we got the outlet of Crooked Lake taken care of, but MDOT said, hey, we know the culvert's really bad. It ain't conducting a whole lot of water. They had previous issues with it where they had to clean it out a few years ago, and the water in Glassby was actually higher than our dam was. Yeah. But Jim Davis told us at conference, told Brian, just get it on the books, get the engineering done, let's get it changed out. So
That may not have a positive impact on Crooked Lake if that has more throughput in there, but hopefully.
yeah, well, I don't think it's going to make any difference. The lake, Crooked Lake now is up at 927.5 as of the other day. I was down there. Jim Minnick called me and double checked it for me. Glassby Lake, our bags were at 927.5 through the winter. So you can see how much difference that's going to make.
Right?
So it's kind of we anticipated, Daryl Jones's, we'd have that up and running and the pumps going by now and would have a couple 3 inches off Crooked Lake before we had to take the sandbags down, but we didn't. And before we took the sandbags down, I touched base with Matt Diana from DNR. They didn't want us to take it down in the winter because the ice buildup there, if you draw water down, crushes all the invertebrates. And he said, he would like to see us wait till April-ish, till the ice was off before we took that down. And so we did make it to that point. So Matt was pretty happy with us.
And for the Jones property, I drive by there often and see that they're busy working over there.
Yep.
Is there a estimated time when you think pumping may begin over there as far as pulling some water?
I'd love to say there is. Brian put in, we had to have a permit to get into Crooked Lake, which we didn't anticipate because originally we were going to just drill through the higher up in Delton Road. But once we found out that DEQ was going to allow us to go north, we said, well, it's stupid to spend $20,000 boring through there high and then turn around and put another culvert down lower later. So Brian, at that point, went ahead and put in for a permit to actually bore under Delton Road and come out under the water in Crooked Lake so we can use that as a permanent flow through, and that's where our pump will be hooked up. But that meant that we had to go get another permit for MDOT or DEQ, and Audrey was very clear at the last task force meeting. She said, we're not giving you any more emergency permits. We did it 3 times last summer for you. Only one of them could we utilize, but she says we have to start following the law. So we did get the authorization, or it came through on an email yesterday, that they've changed the permitting. Used to be if you submitted a permit and something was wrong, they said, hey, you missed, you didn't check box 4 or whatever. Now, if you submit a DEQ permit and they find anything that isn't the way they want it, they kick the whole thing back and you got to start over. The first kickback was if you're going to take down any trees after April 1st, you have to check this box, which we weren't going to take any trees down after April 1st, but because the Indiana bat can be underneath the bark of ash trees, now that's a protected thing. So the first time it got kicked out, I don't know what the other kicks, it's just little things that it's like, really? Come on. But they got their laws, they got their guidelines they have to follow. So I've seen where it's out for the 20-day review now. Once that goes through, I don't know how many days it is after that before they can have a permit. Brian's going to have the bid docks to do the work under Delton Road, whether it's an open cut or whether it's boring. He'll have the bid docks out, I believe, Friday this week, and we'll have bids back for that work the following Friday. The bids will be needed to be back in, and then we'll just have to find out how quick the guys can get in there and do that. So it's a really, really, really complicated
It's a moving target at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to say within 30 days we'll be pumping, but so far I've said that twice before and I've been wrong. So,
any update on Pine Lake?
that one, they got flooding. How's that? I've taken Vivian down there. I want to take a few more commissioners down there just for the fun of it. When you go,
Wear your muck boots.
yeah. The problem is In 69, they set a legal lake level of 890.5 low and 891.5 high. They never had high water on that lake. So they put in an augmentation pump. Great idea. Fast forward to 93, people were flooded because the water was at 893, and it went through the courts, and Judge Schuster did quite a extensive, well, he hired A&E to go out and look at how many houses were impacted and get some kind of a route and course for a drain. And the final thing was, well, less than 5% of the people are affected, we're not going to do anything. Then it went through 3 other courts all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court. And according to Doug Kelly, we do have a legal lake level we're supposed to keep from 890.5 to 891.5. The engineers were out a week and a half ago, and they're at 893.7. So they're 3 feet above their high level. Dan Fredericks and Chad Mancarelli they went back to Tony Grove's study from 93. I said, don't reinvent the wheel. See what he was looking at doing, and let's get moving on that. So they're bringing me a possible route and course for a drain and some kind of very rough estimate on costs. And then we're going to have a public meeting for all the people on the lake to see, how many people are impacted, how many people want something done. Once we get through that, then we'll come back to the commissioners, because we can spend $10,000 or less a year on any lake level structure or any special assessment district. After that, we have to get the commissioners, and this one's going to be ticklish because it's going to be Barry and Allegan, both have to sign to agree to allow us to exceed that $10,000. By law, we have a responsibility to fix it, but by law, we also have a limit on how much we can spend. So, but whenever anybody's got a few minutes and they want to take a ride, I'll take them down there to a few choice spots that are flooded out. Marville Marina's been there since '53, and they've got water in their building. Last year it was within 6 inches. Now it's in, and we haven't got spring rains. So
every lake that doesn't have an outlet is experiencing high water issues and flooding issues.
Exactly. Holcomb Lake, West Gilkey, Indian, Pine Lake, Shelp Lake, Crooked Lake, Long Lake, Wall Lake, Cloverdale Lake, every one of them. And it's all, the only thing we can figure is because, one, the groundwater is way up. I believe Lake Michigan is about 4 feet above where it was a few years ago. And from the DEQ's point is we get a lot more rain in a shorter time, so we don't get the absorption. So a lot of little things build into some real big headaches. So
the Cloverdale Lake Long Lake drain is functioning very well. It's just a matter of keeping the debris out of an undersized exit on the backside of it. I see Cloverdale Lake is high again this spring because of the drain from Cloverdale to Long isn't sufficient to move the water in a timely manner.
Yep. And that's the thing. The only way we can fix Cloverdale's issues, which they've had now for a while, is to upsize that. Last Labor Day, we got hammered in our office that we hadn't cleaned the outlet of Long Lake. There were a lot of real unhappy people because it is a big flooding issue there. Even if them culverts are open, you only got 4 inches of freeboard, and it just can't take it. So when you get a good rain, everybody gets flooded out. And that's one of them things. It'd be great if you could do that and have the drain become our drain, but we have to go through permitting, easements, engineering, DEQ permits. It's a very, very, very slow process. Everything seems to take 2 to 3 years for us. So I'd love to say it's because we want to be thorough, but it's just because we're slow. So, any other questions?
Yeah, that land you bought, is there any possibility that that could ever be farmed, leased out?
Not when it's underwater.
Well,
down the road, if it turns into, if we end up not having to have as big a detention pond, we might be able. Right now, we've got some big holes there that we took dirt out of. We did when we bought that, got one split, and we're putting a driveway into that to about the center of the property, because my thinking is down the road, if we're using it as a retention pond and some of that water goes back, maybe we can sell off a building site on the corner. We did have a logger come in there and took some trees out because they're going to be underwater and dead in a year. We've got $5,100 put back into the drain district for that. So anything we can save a couple bucks on, I don't know why we wouldn't. So any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. How about we take a break before our next presentation? Return back here in 5 or 10? 10? Okay, 9:45.